March 2026. The Strait of Hormuz has become a high-tech graveyard for the Iranian Navy's delusions. In just 11 days, 51 Iranian vessels, including the crown jewel of their maritime ego, the 42,000-ton Iris Shahed Bageri, were systematically transformed into artificial reefs. This is not just a defeat, it is the total liquidation of the so-called asymmetric threat. But first, a mandatory disclaimer. The events described here are a hypothetical wargaming scenario set in the near future. This is a strategic analysis of potential conflict dynamics, not a report of current hostilities. The devastation is absolute. According to NASA satellite imagery and verified OSINT flight tracking, the US Navy's response was surgical and merciless. By March 10, 2026, after 17 ships were vaporized in the first 96 hours, President Donald Trump delivered a televised address from the Oval Office promising death, fire, and fury to any regime threatening the 21 million barrels of oil flowing through Hormuz daily. Simultaneously, during a Pentagon briefing, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth warned the IRGC, "We have only just begun." Tehran's Mosquito Fleet strategy, once feared as a regional gatekeeper, proved to be nothing more than a slow-motion suicide pact. When the F-35C and Mark 48 torpedoes entered the chat, Iran's asymmetric fantasy collided with a very symmetric, very explosive American reality. This 11-day collapse marks a permanent geopolitical shift, proving that the era of holding global energy hostage is officially over. Tehran's ultimate symbol of maritime hubris just became a permanent underwater reef. On March 4, 2026, the Iris Shahed Bageri, a 42,000-ton floating base designed to bully the world, was erased from the surface. This wasn't a battle, it was a surgical decapitation of Iranian naval delusions. According to verified NASA satellite imagery and OSINT flight tracking data, the strike was executed with terrifying precision by a pair of US Navy F-35C Lightning II jets. These ghosts of the sky slipped through Iran's aging, rusted radar nets as if they didn't even exist. The target? A 240-meter-long converted commercial tanker that the IRGC pathetically tried to pass off as a legitimate aircraft carrier. The weapon of choice for this liquidation was the GBU-31 JDAM, a 2,000-pound GPS-guided hammer of justice. When the first bomb punched through the Bagheri's deck, it didn't just sink a ship, it ignited a powder keg of terror. Moored alongside this rusted behemoth were 16 mine-laying vessels, packed to the brim with explosives meant to choke the global economy through energy blackmail. The resulting secondary explosions were so catastrophic, they were detected by seismic sensors across the entire Persian Gulf. In less than 20 minutes, Iran's primary tool for naval terror was vaporized into a cloud of soot and scrap metal. This is the inevitable cost of a, quote, mosquito fleet strategy trying to play in a heavyweight league. Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, stated during a Pentagon briefing immediately following the strike, "Our objective was the total neutralization of offensive capacity. We are striking anything that can fire back, and today, the Bageri stopped firing." Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth hammered the point home on March 10, 2026, noting from the White House that Iran's naval capability has been rolled back decades in a single afternoon. By attempting to hide their assets in plain sight, the IRGC only succeeded in creating a larger, stationary target for American pilots. The 21 million barrels of oil passing through Hormuz daily are no longer under the shadow of Tehran's maritime fantasies. The asymmetric threat has met a very symmetric, very explosive American reality. Iran's dream of holding the world hostage is now buried under 42,000 tons of twisted, charred steel. What do you think? Is this the end of Iran's naval ambitions, or just the beginning of a total regime collapse? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you stand with the precision of the US Navy, and subscribe to stay updated on the front lines of global strategy. On March 4, 2026, the Iranian Navy learned a lethal, final lesson in fluid dynamics. While Tehran's propaganda machine spent years boasting about the invincible domestic engineering of the Iris Dena, the 1,500-ton frigate was being stalked by a silent underwater predator it could never hope to detect. This wasn't a fair fight, it was a clinical execution. The weapon of choice was the Mark 48 torpedo, the gold standard of undersea lethality. Unlike the crude, unguided missiles Iran parades through the streets of Tehran, the Mark 48 is a masterpiece of destruction that doesn't even bother hitting the side of a ship. Instead, it utilizes the terrifying physics of the bubble jet effect. As the torpedo reached the Iris Dena, its advanced sonar slaved the weapon to a position directly beneath the ship's keel. It detonated its 650-pound high-explosive warhead in the water, not against the hull. This created a massive high-pressure steam bubble that surged upward, lifting the entire 1,500-ton vessel out of the ocean. A heartbeat later, the bubble collapsed, creating a localized vacuum. With no water to support the midsection, gravity did the rest. The Iris Dena's back was snapped like a piece of dry kindling. In less than 30 seconds, the pride of the Iranian Navy was transformed into two separate piles of sinking scrap metal. Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, confirmed the precision of the strike during a Pentagon briefing. "Our objective was total neutralization. The Dena didn't just sink, it was physically erased from the surface." This is the grim reality of Iran's asymmetric fantasies. While the IRGC attempts to hold the world's energy supply hostage at the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. Navy is busy proving that Iranian naval architecture is little more than expensive target practice. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, speaking from the White House on March 10, 2026, mocked the regime's crumbling maritime strategy, stating, "By attempting to hide their assets, the IRGC only succeeded in creating larger, stationary targets for American precision." The 21 million barrels of oil that pass through these waters daily are no longer subject to the whims of a mosquito fleet. The Mark 48 torpedo has turned the Persian Gulf into a graveyard for Tehran's maritime delusions, proving that in the realm of subsurface warfare, Iran isn't even in the same league. They're barely in the same ocean. On March 3, 2026, the Iranian regime's underwater stealth pride, the Iris Fate, discovered that the Persian Gulf is not a sanctuary, but a transparent cage. While Tehran's propaganda machine boasted of a silent guardian capable of paralyzing global trade, the U.S. Navy was busy treating the sub's patrol as a live-fire training exercise. The hunt was led by the P-8 Poseidon, the undisputed apex predator of aerial anti-submarine warfare, ASW. Rather than guessing, the P-8 crew deployed a sophisticated grid of sonobuoys, turning the acoustic environment of the Strait of Hormuz into a digital map. Every vibration from the Iris Fate's diesel-electric engines was captured, analyzed, and matched against its unique acoustic signature stored in U.S. databases. Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, described the operation during a classified briefing on March 5th. The IRGC believed their Fate-class boats could vanish in the shallow clutter of the Gulf. They were wrong. To our sensors, the Iris Fate was as loud as a lawnmower in a library. Once the target was fixed, the P-8 released the Mark 54 torpedo, a lightweight surgical instrument of destruction. Unlike the heavy Mark 48s used by submarines, the Mark 54 is optimized for shallow water lethality, utilizing advanced processing power to ignore decoys and lock onto the vibration of a hull. OSINT data and satellite imagery later confirmed the underwater detonation occurred exactly where the sub attempted to hide. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, speaking from the Pentagon, mocked the regime's crumbling maritime doctrine, stating, "Iran's undersea fleet has been exposed for what it truly is, a collection of steel coffins waiting for an American invitation to the seabed." The destruction of the Iris Fate wasn't just a loss of hardware, it was the total collapse of Iran's invisible blockade strategy. By neutralizing Tehran's most modern sub in under 6 hours of tracking, the US Navy sent a devastating signal to any adversary. If you submerge in these waters with hostile intent, you aren't hiding, you're just pre-positioning your own wreckage. The era of the asymmetric undersea threat in the Middle East has been effectively terminated by American air superiority. Tehran is cornered, lashing out like a rabid animal that has finally realized its teeth are made of glass. After the humiliating loss of its naval pride, the Iranian regime has reached for its most desperate and pathetic cards. On March 6, 2026, the IRGC Aerospace Force initiated what they pompously titled Operation Great Prophet 20, a frantic, disorganized barrage of over 120 ballistic missiles aimed at US regional hubs. Among these were the much-hyped so-called hypersonic Fatah II and Khaibar-Shikan missiles, which were detected by US space-based infrared sensors within seconds of ignition. The rhetoric from the bunkers was as loud as it was empty. Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, commander of the IRGC Aerospace Force, declared in a defiant, televised broadcast on Iranian state TV, "The skies of the Persian Gulf will become a graveyard for American hubris. No base is safe from our reach." It was a bold claim, but this Persian fury quickly collided with the cold, hard reality of American integrated air defense. During a press briefing at NAVCENT headquarters, Rear Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, confirmed that the Aegis combat system and land-based THAAD batteries achieved a staggering 94% intercept rate. Most of Iran's superweapons never even made it to their terminal phase. They were transformed into expensive scrap metal and dumped into the sea before they could threaten a single American life. Simultaneously, Tehran attempted to weaponize chaos through its cyber army, launching a massive digital assault to spoof GPS signals and paralyze port logistics in Jebel Ali and Fujairah. The goal was a transparent act of global economic sabotage, choke the 21 million barrels of oil flowing through the region daily, and force global prices to $150 a barrel. However, the US Cyber Command's hunt forward teams had already pre-positioned defensive code. The attack resulted in nothing more than minor delays, leaving the Ayatollahs clicking refresh on a dead screen. In a final cowardly bid for relevance, the regime activated its proxy network. In the Red Sea, Houthi militants launched swarms of fiberglass suicide drones, while Hezbollah fired harassing salvos from Lebanon. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, speaking from the Pentagon on March 8th, mocked these asymmetric attempts with biting precision. Sending fiberglass speedboats and outdated drones against a carrier strike group isn't a military strategy. It's a state-sponsored mass suicide pact. Tehran is trying to scream while we are systematically removing its vocal cords. This failed counterattack served only to validate the total collapse of Iran's A2/AD doctrine. Every missile launched and every proxy activated only gave the US Navy more live-fire data to refine its kill chains. Instead of humbling the West, the mullah's retaliation proved to the world, and specifically to watching eyes in Beijing, that even the most aggressive asymmetric threat is utterly toothless when faced with the overwhelming technological and kinetic supremacy of the United States. If you believe American technology just rendered the IRGC's entire arsenal obsolete, hit that like button and subscribe for more strategic breakdowns. Does Iran have any cards left to play, or is the regime's collapse now inevitable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. By the second week of March 2026, the world witnessed the ultimate collapse of Tehran's naval bravado. The so-called mighty IRGC didn't go down in a blaze of glory. They crawled into the shadows like cornered rats. Their active defense doctrine morphed into a pathetic, cowardly game of urban hide-and-seek. Recognizing that their blue water assets were being rapidly converted into expensive artificial reefs by the US Navy, Tehran ordered its remaining Mosquito fleet to retreat into the civilian ports of Bandaran and Bandung. This wasn't a tactical repositioning, it was a cynical, disgusting human shield strategy. The mullahs docked missile-laden fast attack craft directly alongside commercial grain vessels and essential civilian infrastructure, gambling that Washington would blink at the prospect of collateral damage. They were dead wrong. Precision is the ultimate antidote to cowardice. Leveraging real-time NASA satellite telemetry and high-altitude OSINT data, US F-35Cs launched a series of surgical strikes that redefined psychological warfare. Using 2,000-pound GBU-31 JDAMs equipped with delayed fuse penetrators, the US Navy threaded the needle, vaporizing IRGC assets while leaving the surrounding civilian piers remarkably intact. The political message was sent with blistering clarity. President Donald Trump, addressing the nation from the Oval Office on March 10, 2026, delivered a chilling ultimatum to the regime. If they think they can hide behind their own people to threaten the world's energy, they are fatally mistaken. They will face death, fire, and fury, the likes of which this world has never seen. We see every ship, every shadow, and every coward in a bunker. This wasn't just about destroying hardware. It was about shattering the IRGC's sense of sanctuary. Following the strikes, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth reinforced the narrative during a stern briefing at the Pentagon. To the regime leaders still clinging to the hope of a protracted conflict, "We have only just begun," Hegseth stated with biting precision. "Your urban camouflage has failed. Your asymmetric threats are being systematically dismantled. There is no corner of the Gulf where you can hide from American justice." By targeting these urban hideouts, the US effectively neutralized Iran's final ability to mount a swarm attack on the 21 million barrels of oil transiting the Strait of Hormuz daily. The tactical necessity of these strikes far outweighed the political risks, proving that the era of Iranian naval harassment is over, replaced by a new reality of absolute American kinetic dominance. What do you think? Can the mullahs survive this level of precision, or is the regime's total collapse just a matter of days? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you support the mission, and subscribe to stay updated on the front line of global strategy. The myth of Iranian naval power is currently resting where it belongs, at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Tehran's grand delusion of strangling the global economy hasn't just failed, it has backfired into a spectacular display of military incompetence. The mullahs thought they could pull the strings of the world's energy supply, but the only thing they pulled was a trigger on their own demise. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most vital artery, with 21 million barrels of oil flowing through it daily, representing nearly 20% of global consumption. Tehran gambled that by threatening this bottleneck, oil prices would skyrocket to $150 per barrel, forcing Western economies into a paralyzing recession. They expected the world to blink first. They were dead wrong. Instead of a global crisis, the world witnessed the total dismantling of the Iranian fleet. Data from S&P Global confirms that the US Navy neutralized 51 Iranian vessels in a mere 11 days. The blockade that was supposed to last months didn't even survive 2 weeks. The US Navy didn't just clear a shipping lane, it surgically removed the regime's ability to project even a shadow of power. This collapse is sending shockwaves all the way to Beijing. For years, the Chinese defense industry has banked on asymmetric swarm tactics and carrier-killer narratives, the same failed tactics Iran just tried to execute. Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of US Naval Forces Central Command, made the new reality chillingly clear during a briefing aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln on March 12, 2026. He stated, "The era of us playing defense against regional bullies is over. We are now striking anything that can fire back before it even leaves the pier. The asymmetric advantage our adversaries bragged about is now nothing more than a scrap metal industry at the bottom of the sea." The 42,000-ton Shahed Bageri, touted as Iran's unsinkable masterpiece, was converted into a permanent underwater reef by F-35Cs and GBU-31 JDAMs in a single afternoon. If this is the fate of Tehran's finest, then China's artificial island fortresses look more like glass houses than impregnable bastions. The Iranian Maritime resistance was exposed as a paper tiger built on rusted steel and religious fanaticism. As the regime's navy vanishes from the radar, the message is undeniable. American kinetic dominance didn't just return, it never left. With their naval teeth pulled, can the mullahs' regime survive the internal pressure? Or is this the beginning of the end for Tehran's regional bullying? If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into global strategy. What do you think? Is the era of asymmetric warfare officially dead, or is Beijing already rewriting its playbook? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The illusion of Iranian naval resistance has evaporated into the salt air of the Persian Gulf. In just 11 days, the world witnessed the systematic dismantling of a regime's ego, as 51 vessels, from the 42,000-ton Shahed Bageri to the smallest missile boat, were turned into smoking wreckage. The mullahs' vaunted asymmetric warfare turned out to be nothing more than an expensive, delusional way to build artificial reefs for the local fish. As U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth stated during a decisive press briefing at the Pentagon on March 10, 2026, "The era of maritime extortion is over. We have neutralized the threat so thoroughly that Iran no longer possesses a navy. They possess a collection of underwater scrap metal." This is a total strategic collapse. The Strait of Hormuz, which carries 21 million barrels of oil daily, is finally liberated from the shadow of IRGC terrorism. The swarm tactics that Tehran bragged about for decades proved utterly useless against the kinetic precision of GBU-31 JDAMs and the silent, spine-breaking lethality of Mark 48 torpedoes. By attempting to block global energy lanes, the regime didn't just lose its fleet, it lost its last shred of geopolitical relevance. The myth of the carrier killer has been buried alongside the rusted hull of the Iris Dena. American naval hegemony hasn't just been maintained, it has been redefined for a new century. Any rogue state still clinging to the dream of A2/AD should take a long, hard look at the empty piers in Bandar Abbas. But what's your take? Is this the final nail in the coffin for asymmetric naval threats? Or will we see a new form of suicide tactics emerge? Drop your analysis in the comments below. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit the like button and subscribe to the Iran Collapse channel for the most in-depth military and geopolitical reporting on the fall of the mullahs regime. Stay sharp, and we'll see you in the next brief.